everybody. I'm Adam, and this is Zara, and we're gonna talk about comedy and performing and stuff. So we both have comedy backgrounds. Zara is a stand-up. I have been doing improv at UCB for about 12 years. Tell me how you got into the stand-up game. When did you first start doing it?
Stand-up was the biggest accident ever. I started off acting, and I was in school forever, and then I started exploring being a musician a little bit, and I was playing around at bars and like random places, my house for people, and I felt really stiff being like, here's a song, everybody. It just felt really weird. For your face, here you go. It just felt odd. So my brother actually suggested, he's like, why not do stand up once and then you'll get out of your weird thing you're in and then it'll be easier to go back to music. And then I did stand up and then realized that that was actually what I wanted.
Now that weird thing is your life.
What?
Now that weird thing is your life.
Yeah.
Getting out of it.
Exactly. It was like music without the music is really what I was looking for. So then I just stuck
What was
with
that
it.
like, going from like no experience to getting on stage and telling jokes?
It was weird actually, because I mean, with stand-up, there's so many different facets to it. You know, there's like the performance part, but then there's the writing part, and then there's the crowd work, and then there's hecklers. So like, I felt comfortable with the performing part since I had been acting and, you know, performing for a while. And then the writing was really intimidating, so that's what I really wanted to rev up. And then I just surrounded myself with like my favorite writers as much as I could, and then just tried to be a good writer. And now I'm like trying to get them to kind of measure up to each other. It's sort of weird. Things develop at different rates with stand-up. Sometimes you feel really comfortable on stage, and then sometimes it's like a nightmare. And then sometimes you're like, oh, my writing's awesome, and then that develops. Who knows?
So are you a stand-up who writes your material off stage and then like performs it as written, or do you develop it more on stage and see what works and what doesn't in the moment? It's
kind of both. Sometimes I have an idea for something, and then I'm like, oh, this is worth exploring. Like, I don't know. The other day I had an idea. I was like, soup is weird. I don't know what's weird about soup, but something's weird about it. And then I just went on stage and said it, and then just like kind of wanted to see where it takes me. And now I'm like, oh, okay, I might have a better idea of why soup is so weird, you know?
Why is soup so weird?
It's just this is gonna go down a weird rabbit hole, but like, it's just such a sad food. Like, everybody loves it. But I just feel like you only eat soup if you're cold or sick or poor. But everyone's like, but soup! But I've never seen anyone ever celebrate anything with soup. So like, what is all the fuss about? Anyway, not to like just try to like do my jokes right now. But like,
sorry.
No, it's fine.
Like, do that bit you just
I just didn't want to
Great.
seem like one of those like, I'm a comic always. Like, we could talk about normal things.
So how many years have you been doing stand-up?
Almost 7 now.
And how long did it take you to feel like competent at it?
Any day now. Let's hope soon.
Is it basically like a very gradual, every time you do it, you feel a little more comfortable, like you're a little bit better?
Yeah, I mean, you know, because you do improv, but like, performing is the weirdest. Like, I don't know if I'll ever feel good. Like, I don't know if I've ever had a set that I've been like, that was amazing. Like, even the other night, or last night actually, I got on stage after like a string of just really mediocre shows. It was so weird. I just felt like I couldn't be comfortable on stage. And then last night at the Improv, someone was like, oh, someone dropped out. Do you want to get on stage? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then I did, and it was a fun set. But and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. At least that string of mediocre shows is over, but I still don't feel like great about it. Like, I don't know if I ever will.
Like, is there like a brass ring for stand-up? Like, if you get, you know, the hour Netflix thing special or the HBO special, is that like, all right, I'm doing it, I'm confident now, or is that still not enough?
I mean, I guess then it's like, oh, okay, someone else thinks I'm funny too, awesome. But like, but I know so many people who got it and then still feel terrible. Or like, stand-up is particularly weird because it's so disposable. Because like, you'll do it and then it's great, and then everyone probably won't even remember. They're like, oh yeah, the girl who looks like the chick from The Ring was cool or something. But like, I don't know if they'll ever really like remember. It feels like they're rarely taped. It sort of just like falls through your hands as soon as
it's one of those tough things, like bands spend all this time recording an album and then they get to play those songs a million times for years. But a comic, you hear their jokes once, but like, all right, what else you got? I don't want to hear that joke again.
Oh my God, that's so true. Yeah.
It seems it's cruel.
Well, that's kind of, I mean, you must feel that way with like improv, right? Especially because nothing gets repeated.
Well, I feel like that's why I like improv, that I don't spend any time writing it, so I don't feel precious about it when I perform it. It's like, all right,
where do I sign
up? As much
up?
as the effort I put into it, which is almost zero. So it doesn't feel like, it's like, oh man, I can't believe nobody's going to see that thing I just farted out on stage for 10 minutes again. But it's really good. You guys should come to UCB. See, what do you think about the, like, I feel like there's sometimes a weird rivalry between improv and stand-up people, like they pick one or the other. Like, what are your like actual feelings about improv? Don't be polite to me about it.
No, I think improv's awesome. Good improv is amazing. Like, I used to go to the UCB and watch all the time and see these performances. I'm like, how? Like, to me it seems so much, people say stand-up is scary, but like, first of all, this is scarier. But also, with doing improv, like, how do you not even know what you're gonna say? Like, that sounds insane to me. At least if I have confidence in my jokes, I can be like, oh, I'll always fall back on this one, which always works until it doesn't.
See, I feel like it's the opposite for me. I feel like there's a lot, if I had to remember lines or remember, I was like, all right, get the timing of this punchline right, I would get in my head. But since there's like nothing to remember and it's just all in the moment, I feel less pressure, weirdly.
That makes sense. That makes sense. There is, it's kind of what I love about, after doing stand-up for so long and talking to, you get into like agent meetings or whatever, and then they're like, great, so you do stand-up, what else do you have? And then at a certain point I was like, okay, I have to write a script. And then when I did, it was really nice to like have something solid that you could just send to people whenever. You don't have to be like, come to a show and maybe it'll be good.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay, I have confidence in this. And
did your experience doing stand-up help inform your writing?
Yeah. Stand-up's really cool because you really find out, if you do it right, you really find out like who you are as a human being. Like, there were so many things that I didn't realize I was kind of experiencing just day to day that I really had to like hone in and work into jokes, and then it's fun to like just be able to punch up your script if you have to or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And I imagine it's beneficial for both writing and performing because you are doing, it's just you on stage doing both of those things, your material, your performance, no backdrop or no net.
Yeah, I mean, you're a comedy writer, so you know too, right? Like, it's really fun to be able to write comedy in different mediums. Like, doing stand-up or improv seems like a nice base for that because you can kind of just take it to whatever form. I mean, I guess. That was a sentence that sounded like it was going to mean something, but it actually didn't.
So how did you go from, you got representation, how did that work for you? What was your journey to representation? Oh, it's like a pretty big stepping stone in people's careers.
Yeah, I mean, I had agents and managers who were just not really doing what they said they would. And that it was like that for years. And I was like, but why aren't people working for me? And at a certain point, I was like, all right, I just got to work for myself. And so doing stand-up was one of the biggest things that I felt good about because it's completely in my control. I can do it whenever I want. And then that just led to meeting people. And then I wrote this pilot. It's a half-hour comedy, and I didn't even write it to be in it. I just wrote it to have it. Because everyone kept asking, like, well, what do you have? And then it got optioned, which then got sent out to studios, and then I would go in for those generals that almost feel like you're like, what is this even? Is this actually a meeting, or is it, who knows what comes out of this? And then they were like, well, if you're not repped, maybe I can just see where who's looking, and then it got sent to 3 Arts, and then they came to shows like 1,000,000 times. It was like a long process. It was like, yeah, here's my thing, and then you have to wait forever for them to read it. And then they're like, well, come to a show. Cool, then they come. Okay, we'll come to another one. And then it was like that for months until finally they were like, okay. And then it was like more of a relief that it happened than anything. It was like, oh, okay, at least all the like hoop jumping
Like
is
just
over.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's super beneficial to not, like, you can't just rely on one thing. You can't just be like, okay, well, I'm a stand-up, I'm doing stand-up, and so it'll lead to X, Y, and Z. You have to do a bunch of stuff, because you don't just write, you also, you know, you have videos that you put online and things like that, so.
Yeah, oh my God, it's just endless. It's like, I get anxiety because I like never feel like I'm doing enough. I'm like, I have to write more sketches, I have to write. And then even when I wrote my pilot, when I was like stoked, they were like, great, so what other pilot? And then I was like, oh God, and then I had to like go back and do that, and then I did that. And then, and they were both like, I mean, writing's a nightmare. I love it, but it's a nightmare. Like, I didn't believe in any of the projects I had until I finished them. I was like, I don't know what's gonna be at the end of this. I have no idea, because apparently they were like, some people won't believe in a project if they read it as a sample. Like, if I'm trying to sell something, then they're like, no, it's better to have a project that you want to sell and then the project that you want as a sample. So that people won't read a sample and then you're trying to sell that sample. They're like, no, that's just a sample, apparently. Did that make sense? What I said? I couldn't tell. So I was like, oh God, now I have to write this thing. And then now I'm like, all right, I have to write a feature. It's just like...
There's always another thing.
There's always another thing. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's just like our hustle. Right?
Yeah. And do you think, it feels like there's more and more avenues for people to put jokes out on these days, just between Twitter and every social media thing there is, and there's all these different mediums. Do you think it's like more, is it like overwhelming? The difference, like, well, you putting up funny Insta stories? Why not? Like, is there like too much opportunity to be funny? Does it make it hard to focus?
Maybe, yeah, like the people who aren't doing it are just lazy or something. I put things on Insta stories all the time, and then just today I was like, I should put more things on my timeline too. It's like, oh, when does it end? It doesn't. But the cool thing about comedy is, you know, is it's really collaborative. I mean, I guess any acting, right, is like really collaborative. So you could just hit up your friends and be like, hey, I have this like really weird idea. Sometimes I shoot sketches with these improv Instagram celebrities, and shooting stuff with them is really interesting because what they'll do is like they're like, I have a weird idea about like a pinky promise. And so they just start with like two people who are like, yeah, I pinky promise to always be there for you. And then they're like, okay, what now? And then they write it as they go. And I thought that was really cool because I kind of over-prepare, I over-write because I'm a stand-up and you kind of have to. But seeing them do that was like really inspiring because I was like, oh wow, like there are a million ways to come up with creative things. And it kind of inspired me to just write my second pilot actually, which I didn't really know how it was gonna end or anything. And that was kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, it's more like the improv mindset of just kind of like,
yes.
All right, here's an idea, and then where do we build it from here, as opposed to having the entire thing figured out.
Yeah, exactly. Which I would like love to be more comfortable with, just like letting go and not knowing where something's gonna end up.
Yeah, those are like the competing mindsets, I guess, of stand-up and improv, of just like being in control or not having much control at all. Yeah, it's kind of scary. But I mean, the best performers can do both, so I guess that's just what I'm trying to do. Congratulations on selling Split Cider. Thank you.
To New York Magazine.
Yeah, Split Cider is a website about comedy I started about 7 years ago, and New York Magazine just bought it because there's no money to be made for independent websites anymore. So kind of a bittersweet thing.
So I just sold it and got a bunch of money.
Well, a small amount.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you exactly. So how often are you doing stand-up? Like, are you doing shows every night?
Almost. At least 5 shows a week, between 5 and 10 shows a week usually.
And what's it like keeping that schedule up and like booking shows that frequently and going out every night? Like, what's that like? It's
weird. It sounds tiring, but for me, just because I love it so much, I don't feel right not doing that many. And then there's always somebody who's going to outwork you. And sometimes I'll just be like, oh, I can only do like 2 or 3 shows this week. And then I go to a club and then see the comics go up and then they're funnier all of a sudden. And I'm like, how dare they? And then I have to get funnier. I'm like, who do they think they are, getting funnier than me? And then I have to like make sure that I stay funnier.
You guys pushing each other.
Yeah, right, like indirectly. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of, after a while, I mean, I love stand-up so much, it's just my thing. Like, I hope I never stop, but it feels like going to the gym. So, like, if you don't do it for a few days, then it feels really weird.
Do you think, have you gone out and done stand-up in New York? But the conventional wisdom that I've heard is that it's easier to start your career in New York because you can do 5 shows a night there. You can just take the subway to all these clubs, and then once you're more established, you come out here where it's harder to. Do you think that makes sense? Is that
makes
true?
Complete sense. I started in LA because I was born and raised here, and it's so hard to do stand-up here. It's just like so concentrated. There's so many people, and then it's strange, and people just book their friends. I mean, it's like that everywhere, but like in New York, there are way more shows, and then here, I had to be horrible in front of people who mattered first. And that was really like scary. Yeah,
there's not as many like venues for your training wheels here. You just kind of like, well, here I am at the Improv or whatever, and it's like,
it's really scary. Yeah, I definitely had to like reprove myself a few years later. I'm sure I'll still have to because I don't know who's been there, but it's definitely nerve-wracking because you never know who's there.
So what were those early, like when you were first starting, like where would you perform in LA and what was that like?
I started at the Comedy Store. Again, a horrible place to start, just because that place is packed all the time and you have no idea who's there. But I did. I started there, and then I just wanted to get that horrible beginning of a craft feeling out of the way. So I just did like 10, 12 shows a week, just to try to like accelerate that awfulness.
Is there an open mic at the store, or how?
There is, but it's not really an open mic. It's like an audition for the talent booker there. But I would do these shows called bringer shows, where you had to like bring audience members to perform, and then if you didn't bring friends, then you wouldn't go up, and then you would be there till like midnight, and all your friends hate you at that point. Because they would just put up their friends, and then the people who brought the audience would go last, and I mean, I did that for a long time. Right. Yeah, it gives me shudders.
Yeah, do you have any good like real horror stories from back when you were starting out?
I have horror stories from last week. I have terrible stories. I've done more bad shows than good shows, definitely. You're looking at me like you want a story.
No.
Yeah, you want one? This was a few weeks ago. Oh my God. So I'll make it quick. But it was at this bar, great place for comedy, and like I walk in and the show had started, but I didn't know it started because what I saw when I walked in was just emptiness. But then when like my eyes adjusted, the host was already on stage. And he was already in a fight with a drunk couple at the bar. and then I turn, and there's one other audience member, and it's just a blind guy in a corner. I don't know how he got in there. And he was facing this way, and the host was right here. And then the host was a black guy, and then this drunk chick was a white girl. And then she was like, oh God, she was like, but that Vegas shooter, like he's not a terrorist because he's white. And like that was what I walked into, and I was like, oh my God. And the host was like, do you know what a terrorist is though? It's someone who inflicts terror. And her boyfriend goes, just listen to her, man.
We all understand the dynamics of a comedy club. The host has to listen to the drunk asshole in the front row.
Yeah, definitely don't listen to the person with the microphone. Listen to this chick. And then in the middle of this fight, the blind, this might be inappropriate, the blind guy just screams out, I want pussy. Like that's what he yelled. I swear to God. And I turned to my friend, another comedian, and I was like, why don't they just kick her and them out? He was like, because then there would be no show. And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. Like,
what is it about stand-up that makes it's weird? Because improv does not get heckled.
Yeah, you guys don't get heckled. We get heckled all the time.
Stand-up people think it's like a two-way street. It's like well, you're up there talking, so it feels like a conversation that we could be having.
Yeah.
Like, do you get hecklers often?
Girls get heckled less than guys. Like, and then when we do get heckled, it's not as mean. It's not as like, you suck. It's more just like, take your shirt off. But so it's a little different. So it's easier to respond to that, I feel, than you suck. Like, I don't even know what I would, I don't even know
no,
what I would
I
say.
don't.
No, your mom. Like, I really don't know what I would say. A lame response.
I don't know. I would freeze. I'd be like, what? But I'm performing. What? You should be quiet. Watching this. Well, what's this dynamic? It's
Learn
changed.
your place, bro. No, I would probably like make fun of what he's wearing, because they're always wearing something stupid. Hecklers.
Yeah, if you're stupid enough to heckle at a comedy show, you've probably made a bunch of other stupid choices in your life.
Yeah, you're probably wearing sandals or something.
You're not a great person in general.
Yeah. So he just yelled that out, and the craziest thing of the whole night was when she was like, "I'll see your dick," and then they get up and leave together. I swear to God, that's what happened.
Really?
Yeah.
What bar was this?
You want to go?
I mean, I'm just curious.
It was this bar on Fairfax. The story hasn't even hit its peak. Yeah, dude. So they leave together, and then 10 minutes later, in the middle of someone else's set, they come back, and then she and the boyfriend start fighting. And she was like, "Whoa, we're not together like that." And he was like, "What the hell, babe?" And then they get in this whole thing, and then the blind guy goes, "Hey, Amy!" Like that, and then she gets up and sits on his lap. This is all in the middle of someone's set. And then the blind guy goes, "I want to do stand-up." And the host goes back on stage. He was like, "This show literally can't get any worse. Come do a few minutes." So then he goes on stage and starts screaming about something. I couldn't really tell you, but I did hear this quote. He was like, "Don't you hate it when girls just want to see your dick?" And to like silence, obviously, right? He's just like yelling, and at that moment, the booker of the show walks in and sees this guy on stage, and then talks to the host. He's like, "Who the hell's this guy?" And he's like, "Well, it's a funny story." And he's like, "No, get him off the stage." And he tries to give him the light to get off. And then he realizes it, and he's like, "Oh, he's fucking blind." And the comics just erupt in laughter from the back, and the blind guy goes, "There we go." Real thing that happened.
No, is this gonna feel really weird when that guy also gets signed to 3 Arts next week? You have to talk to him in the offices.
I thought you were about to say, it's gonna be really weird when you find out I was the blind guy.
So are you focusing more on writing, or do you audition as well?
Oh, I do both, yeah. Oh my God, I just auditioned to be the new Blue's Clues host. It was the worst audition I think I ever had. I think I'll I definitely want to keep auditioning and writing, and I mean, you kind of have to do everything. But hopefully, I'm like looking to get a writing job soon, hopefully, and then we'll see. Stand-up though, like if stand-up's cool for me, just because then I know it's something that's like just for myself, that no one can tell me what to do with it or what to, how to say something. I mean, my managers give me great insights, but it's really fun to just have something that's just for yourself. Like, even when I was acting, just only acting, I wish I had done more like sketches, and I still want to even do more, but like, I wish I just have something that's like just for you, because then it's like, it's just so empowering. And then at the end of the day, you can be like, all right, I had this horrible audition. Like after that Blue's Clues thing, like I felt so awful. I was like, I can't believe I just had a bad audition. Like I just wasn't expecting to have a bad audition. And then, but I went into stand-up, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, this is just for me.
Yeah. You think if you got like a dream job, if you're like, oh, I got a staff writing gig on a TV show I love, and I get to, guest in it sometimes, would you still be hitting clubs every night, do you think?
Yeah.
Is that just like a lifetime thing?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. Yeah, stand-up's cool. It's kind of like you can do it whenever, for however old. I mean, some amazing comics who are out right now, like, started in their 50s. It's like, that's what I love about stand-up. It's so cool, and you probably will even be better in 6 years than a 20-year-old in 6 years, because you already know kind of who you are, and it's easier to write. And I mean, I sometimes feel like I'm behind because I'm still figuring out like who I am as a person. sometimes I really don't even know if I know. If someone asked me, I don't even know how I would begin to answer that question. But I mean, something I do every day is I write one-liners on like Twitter and Facebook and stuff, and it's like such a small thing, but for me it's a really big deal because seeing such a millennial point of view, but seeing the response from people just lets me know, oh, okay, there's like a cool insight there.
And it's just got to be better motivation than just like writing jokes in a notebook, because you actually get feedback, and you know you can. It's like a nice affirmation. You're like, oh, this is a funny joke. People, there are at least some people out here are laughing at it, as opposed to just being a completely internal, private, personal thing. Yeah, that's what's cool about like being in the millennial age, I guess. I mean, for all of us, like it's really cool to know what works quickly. You know, you could just put up a sketch and then immediately people are like, oh, I really like it, as opposed to like spending months on something and then you won't know. I always try to like tell myself and my friends, like, just write something and just put it out, like even if it's not. Yeah. Do you use? Is there like a difference between jokes for Twitter and jokes for the stage? Are there some that you were like, oh, this will be funny here, but only if you're reading it on your phone? Oh my God, it will not work at all on stage. Dude, yeah, only like all of them. It's so weird. I've never had a tweet verbatim work on stage, but I've definitely had just like an insight that I had to rework, because it's weird the way the brain works. The way we read something isn't the way we hear something. So sometimes you'll have to like put the funny punchline at the end, like the funny word at the end as opposed to the beginning. Yeah. Makes sense. Punchline at the end. Punchline at the end. It's mind blowing idea. No, but like I had this idea once about like how I said like feelings are the worst STD ever. That's a great tweet, but then it didn't work on stage, and then I was like, STD is like the worst STD is feelings, and then all of a sudden it worked. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's bizarre, but that's kind of what I like about stand-up. It's just like the psychology of it and finding out what works. Like that's what gets me really excited. It's not like validation or whatever. It's just like, oh, I cracked that weird thing. Yeah. Are there jokes that you like tried and they failed like 24 times before you got it to work? Like, yeah. Like, what's the longest you've tried a joke out, like tweaked a joke on stage between it, like conception and it feeling like all right, this is a good joke? Oh my God, years. Yeah. Years, yeah. My closer right now, I wrote in my first year of comedy, and I didn't really crack it until about a year ago. And even still, I'm like, oh, I bet there's something, like another way to say it or something. But I mean, that's what's cool. It's like it's sort of ever changing, and you can rework things anytime. Yeah. Yeah. So, what advice would you give yourself? Not to be too hackneyed here, but like if you could go back and like just starting out, or somebody just starting out now, is there something that you feel like is super valuable that you did not know that you know now? I wish I had like jumped on the internet sketch thing earlier. I mean, I still can, but I get really, for some reason, like I get really intimidated by shooting things myself. I don't know why, because every time I do, it's a blast. But if I had done that earlier, like, because when I started stand-up is right when people really started doing it, and like not funny things were getting amazing responses, and I kind of wish I had done that. And now I can lie to myself and be like, it's because I'm such a purist. But really, I was just scared. So I wish I had done that. But I mean, honestly, the coolest thing about being an artist, I think, is that anything that we experience in life, which happens with time and age, it just is fodder for material. So like, the more things we do, the more resources we have to draw on, you know? So it's like, okay, if something takes you like maybe 5 years longer than it should, okay, fine, but like, what did you get in that 5 years? Maybe it'll be better now, you know? I mean, not to say like, wait forever, but I mean, you know, as a writer, it's like you just sort of just bring whatever you have to the project in front of you. Yeah. I feel like one of the hardest things with either writing or performing or anything, putting something out there, is that those first few things, like your first stand-up set, your first web video you're putting out there, your first joke, your first spec script you're sending out. It's super hard to trust yourself and be like, oh, this is good and worth sharing with other people. How did you have trouble with that? How did you like get over that hump of like believing in yourself enough to like actually put yourself out there when you had zero experience with this stuff?
I mean, yeah, with stand-up, it's like you more you just get used to the idea of people judging you really quickly. You kind of have to. So putting things out there that don't work, I'm kind of like, all right, whatever. That just sort of comes with a job title. But in the beginning, when I first started stand-up, I didn't know how hard people were judging me. So it was easier for me to be like, here's a hacky joke, and I'm going to open with that for 3 years, you know? And so I think it was easier in that way. But now that I know, I mean, the more we do it, the less we care, I guess, eventually, you know? It's really, I said something on stage the other night, and I was like, why did I say that? I do things all the time, but then you're like, all right, well, like we were saying, it's just kind of disposable. Like, people don't remember the bad stuff, they don't really remember the good stuff. I mean, unless it's like really bad, but.
Yeah, they remember the good stuff and the really, really bad stuff. And
yeah,
the mediocre
the
stuff
extremes. Yeah, the things that you feel good about, they're like, nah, whatever.
Is there often a big disconnect? Do you get out on stage and it's like, fuck yeah, this joke is going to murder, and then it just gets nothing, and vice versa?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Yeah, that's another thing you have to let go. I mean, I have no idea where this soup idea will take me, but it might be great, or people might be like, why that you're reaching? Like, why do you care so much about this thing everyone loves? But, you know, it's something like that. Like, it could easily go nowhere. I tried it like once or twice. And, it sucks when something doesn't work that you really wanted to.
Come on, I have to make this work. I love this joke, so it will work. It's like you can't force it.
Yeah, I know.
If people don't like it, they don't like it.
Listen to me, make you laugh.
Well, I guess that's the question. It's like, as you said, you'll like kind of tweak jokes for years. Like, how do you know, like, this one's worth sticking with? I can crack this nut, or it's like, this is a bad joke only I like, and I should stop inflicting it on people.
Yeah, there's a difference of it getting like no response and then it getting like sort of a response. Where you're like, oh, okay, they're laughing at the setup, so that maybe I just need to like tweak the punchline.
Right, there's something there.
Yeah. Yeah, even like the weirdest, my favorite jokes are the ones that don't sound funny when you're just like paraphrasing it for people. And then all of a sudden on stage, they're like, oh, that's so funny. Whereas you're like, I have this soup idea. And then people are like, okay, sounds kind of funny, but like you're so weird.
And then this guy makes you tell it in front of people when you're not prepared to. Yeah, you're welcome.
Right, you know? I mean, you're familiar. So yeah, I mean, it also, like, your inner barometer has to become really strong because you're doing shows at, like, awful places a lot of times with, like, no response. So it's, so you have to kind of just know yourself. I record all my sets. I listen to all my sets at least once or twice. I had to do that today, which was uncomfortable. It's always awful.
It seems so hard. I can't imagine just, like,
you
listening to...
You don't feel that way when you write stuff, or when you read stuff you wrote?
I don't know, it seems different. Listening to yourself performing feels like must be... I mean, having never done it, I just assume it's harder. I don't like listening to myself on tape. I guess that's part of it.
But you perform. You never hear your improv sets?
People don't really record improv.
Oh yeah, why would you? Why would it?
They've tried it. It basically fails 100% of the time when it's recorded and broadcast. So
that sounds great. No evidence.
Yeah, exactly. Another reason it's great. And that's another thing. Yeah, no pressure. You know, it's just for these 150 people in the room or whatever. And then after that, it's like, well, it was just for you guys. Now I don't have to live with the reaction to it forever.
Yeah, I guess it's even more disposable than stand-up.
Yeah.
Like whenever I think stand-up's disposable.
That's why Twitter freaks me out. Because the jokes that you can toss off or the reactions to things like feel very of the moment, but then they're on your permanent record and they can come back to haunt you.
You know there's a delete button.
I know, I have my Twitter account set to auto-delete my tweets after 2 weeks. So I have 0 tweets.
You have to show me where that is.
Yeah. Tweetdelete.com, everybody, I highly recommend it. It's a beautiful service, basically erases your internet
history. Hold on, you're actually telling the truth about that.
Yeah, tweet delete. You said you connect it to your
because
account.
Because I tried to look at his Twitter.
You can set it to erase everything, and then you can set it to delete everything after a certain amount of time. So I had it delete all of my tweets, and then after 14 days, it runs every day. Anything older than 14 days, it deletes.
What if there's something you want to keep?
There's nothing I want to keep on Twitter. It's a garbage platform. I also don't workshop jokes. I'm not using it for work. It was just like, oh, I'm having a conversation with friends and making jokes, and I'm like, oh, but everybody can see this, and you can search for it, and it's attached to my name forever, and that's stuff I don't remember writing.
I love that you're using Twitter to connect with friends when like text messages are perfectly fine.
Look, it's Twitter's fault. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for coming.